5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now.
Welcome to Glowburn, a podcast dedicated to the Mutant Crawl Classics roleplay game.
Welcome to Glowburn, a podcast about the Mutant Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school post-apocalyptic adventuring. I'm Referee Bill.
And I'm Referee Forrest.
We apologize for the delay. Your vessel, the Warden, has experienced a slight entanglement with a cloud of space radiation. We have reviewed the sensor data and are announcing that everything is perfectly fine. Your safety and well-being is our number one goal. We will resume our course shortly. Once again, we apologize for the delay.
Forrest, where are we?
Well, I got us tickets, Bill.
Tickets on what?
Tickets on the spaceship Warden.
Oh, we must be in Metamorphosis Alpha.
Yeah, we're going to be on here a while, so there's plenty of time for great disaster.
You know what? I'm going to go find a shelter right now. I'll see you.
I'll join you soon.
Down in the shelter.
Well, we're down in the shelter, and I'll tell you what, we only had a couple weeks before recordings, and I had one session planned for us, and work emergency came up, had to cancel it. So I have not actually run a game.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know, it's a big bummer, and so I rescheduled with my guys, and everybody gets bummed out when the DM can't play, right?
Yeah, I know.
So, but, in the meantime, I've been reading on my Gamma World 6 stuff for fun, and that's been enjoyable, and always prepping for these shows. It's just direction I want to go, and I'm enjoying that. I think, though, you might have a little bit more to talk about, so I'm going to hand it off to you.
I might have a lot more to talk about. Unfortunately, you're going to get sick of hearing of me. So, yeah, this couple weeks ago now, we're not recording this in real time, or presenting this in real time, so it's going to be a little weird, but I was just at Gamehole Con here in Madison, and boy, what a blast. That was way more fun than it ought to be.
Did you get any sleep?
I got very little sleep. I think Thursday night I got about 3 hours. Friday night was about 4. I didn't go Sunday, so Saturday I got to actually catch up a little bit. But it was crazy busy fun. So let's see, games that I played in. I started off sitting in on a Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing, 1st edition, a game that I've never played. Even though I lived in England for several years, which is weird because everybody was playing it but me, apparently.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. And after that, I actually ran a game. Oh, actually, let me backtrack a bit, because before the actual convention started, that Thursday night, Doug Kovacs, who, as you know, is the artist for Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics, or the main artist, he ran what he called Punjar 50,000, which is somewhere between Necromunda and Judge Dredd and Dungeon Crawl Classics. So there was a lot of chaos going on. That was crazy fun. We had 2 separate groups. I think there were 6 of us in each group, and we were different factions in this city. We were both at odds with each other, which got really interesting when they finally caught up with the other group, caught up with my group.
So was it PvP?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. And it was a blast. I mean, really, honestly, some of the best role playing I've seen. I really, it was incredible. Yeah, I can't go into too many details because what happens at Gamehole Con stays at Gamehole Con.
Right.
But we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of death and destruction, and my character, who was the first wife of the cult leader that we were following,
Yeah.
ended up being disintegrated with acid essentially, and turned into what's called a servo skull.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy fun. And the whole time, the purpose of our little cult there was to convert people to the fact that to be happy with the fact that this Doom planet was coming to crash into our world, and we were going to welcome the Doom planet. Anyway,
we accept our new overlords with
our utter destruction.
Their destruction with open arms.
Yeah. It would have been a great lead-in for an MCC campaign, honestly. Actually, it would have been just about perfect. So anyway, so there was that. And then, like I said, the next morning, after a little sleep, I played some Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing, which was really cool, really fun. I played a dwarf. It's the first time I've ever played a dwarf in any system ever.
Really?
Yep. But I was just like, well, why not? I'm trying something new. I'll try something new and something new. So anyway, had a good time with that. Let's see. I'm trying to remember things in order, and it's all just such a muddled mess. I'm having a hard time doing that. I did run my what I call the Lamentations of Foreign Hadad Swimlinko.
Right.
Which
and that's what the Lamentations of the Flame Princess rules, right? As
the base rule, yes, a modified version of character creation there as a base rule set, and everything there was randomized. It was completely generated from random tables. We randomly drew a map, and I had my players rolling dice all night long to determine what was going on, and so it was a discovery thing for all of us. It was a lot of fun. One thing that worked well was I had them rolling a D6 for encounters. And if they rolled a 6, they got an encounter of some kind, or something happened. And they kept rolling 6s. I mean, they just could not stop rolling 6s.
They kept filling up their dance card, huh?
Oh my goodness! So it got crazy really quick. There was a MacGuffin that they were supposed to go after. They had no idea where it was in the city because, frankly, we didn't know what the city looked like.
Right.
And there were a couple of other factions that eventually emerged out of this that were coming after this same artifact. Now, long story short, it started a little slow just because we were looking up things on tables and whatnot. So I was kind of like, is this thing ever going to get off the ground? But after about the first 45 minutes, first hour, it started really picking up. And we started piecing the story together as we went because there was no plot. There was no railroading in this.
Right.
And it eventually ended at the very end. Of course, somebody rolled a 6 for an encounter. So I had the guy, person sitting next to me, Victor Kraus, I had him roll up a creature randomly generated. And it ended up being essentially, are you familiar with the Lovecraft mythos?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so it essentially came out being a dark young of Shub-Niggurath. And but this one had a special ability in that its touch was poison. Save or die, poison. Right. So at the very end of this, the characters, all they had to do was they had dispatched a couple of crowds that were following them or trying to get to them. They had to run down the street and jump into a hole. Well, about halfway down the street, somebody rolled a 6, and it happened to be this creature that popped out of a doorway right next to the party. Well, one of the things that I allowed was a point system for spells that allows you to cast a spell way beyond the level you would normally be able to cast. Mm-hmm. And I randomly determined what those spells were. So somebody ended up with the imprisonment spell, which, if you remember from your Dungeons & Dragons days, is a ninth level spell.
Yeah. You pretty much send something away from this plane, right?
Yes. And imprison it somewhere. These were third level characters. Okay, so way out of their range, but he had the spell points left. He was wise enough to save them. Yeah. So he had to touch this creature, and he rolled a 20 and touched it, obviously. Critical hit. Touched it. Instantly, the spell went off. The creature was imprisoned. However, there was this contact poison that he had to touch when he touched the creature. He rolled a 1 on his save.
So, I bet the table went wild.
Oh, it was crazy. Just this absolutely insane happening. I could not have railroaded it better. I couldn't have done it better. I mean, I couldn't have written this as a book better. It was incredible. So, a lot of fun there. Let's see. I also sat in on a Alan Hammock's episode. Alan Hammock, if some people might recognize that name, he was part of TSR years and years ago, and he had a character in the old Rogues Gallery called Lasseverin, the Dark, I think it was.
Okay.
Who's an assassin in the Rogues Gallery. So I went to this. We were going to play this session where we were playing all evil characters, and we had this job in basically the plains of hell. I sat down, and the GM or the DM, Alan, said, "Oh, I've got this character class, this one. I'm looking at him like, I'll take the assassin. What the heck? Why not? I had forgotten that he was the guy from TSR, right? I had totally forgotten about it. So I grabbed this thing. I'm like, oh, Lasseverin, I know that guy. And he turns to me and just he just had this little like proud glimmer in his eye. He says, "Yeah, I played him in Gary's campaign." And I was like, "Are you serious?" "Yeah, that's my character." And I was like, "This is so cool. I got to sit at the table and play Lasseverin with the player who created Lasseverin, back in the original Greyhawk."
See, if that were me, at some point he'd have turned to me and going, "Bill, why are you framing that? You still need to use that character sheet." I'm going to frame it.
No, he did get his character sheets back. So, but anyway, that was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
And he got to, it was good fun. There was some PvP stuff, but not intentional.
Right.
Kind of got geased by a Rakshasa and ended up backstabbing the party mage. He survived, and then later on we were in a battle, and the magician cast a lightning bolt that bounced off 2 walls and hit my character and killed him.
Oh.
Oh, it was great. It was perfect because he knew I backstabbed him earlier, right?
Yeah.
And it was purely accidental. He just happened to bounce the wrong way. But yeah, karma. Let's see. A couple other things. I did run my Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure Beyond the Silver Screen.
Yeah.
And had a great time. Jen and Bob Brinkman were part of that crew.
Which that's available for purchase up on Drive-Thru, right?
Yes. It's also available for purchase on the Goodman Games third-party website as well.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, if
so
you want
they
a hard
carry
copy.
it too. Awesome.
Yeah, they have the hard copy. Drive-Thru only has the PDF.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, yeah, Jen and Bob, among several other awesome gamers, were there, and it was a blast. It was a blast. Bob is a hoot. He's a handful. Had a great time though. Anyway, I can't say enough good about that group. That was a great gaming group. That's the kind of one you just hope for,
Yeah.
Just the right personalities, and everybody was having fun.
As I have often done meetups, that's just one of the first fears or worries. Not a fear. It's just a worry. I can manage just about any group, but it is, is this group going to gel or not, right? And some don't, but you're always hoping are they going to gel? Are they going to get together? Are they going to, speak out and do what they're here to do? And it's great when they do.
Right. No, it was a lot of fun. When you see your as a DM or judge or whatever, when you see your list fill up, you don't necessarily know the names of the people who are going to play, and it's like, who is this going to be? I know there's 6 people there, but who is it going to be? And I walked in there, and it's like, oh, this is awesome, because I knew all of them except one, actually.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, one person was new to me, the other 5 I knew, and actually 3 of them I had some gaming experience with. So anyway, good fun. 2 other things. I also sat in on Traveler 5 session on the ship called the Anik Nova. That was a lot of fun. That was run by an individual local guy here named Tim McLeod, who has obviously been playing Traveler for a very, very long time. And as I was sitting there, lo and behold, who should walk up but Mark Miller.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I knew he was running some scenarios, but I didn't get in. I knew he had a seminar. I just couldn't fit it in my schedule. Right. And so I'm sitting there at the table, and he walks up to the table, and I fanboyed it. I just kind of lost my breath. I brought my Traveler book just in case, and so I said I was like, can you sign my book? And he says, well, sure. So I had him sign the book, and then he gave me a little card. He gave everybody at the table, actually, all 5 of us, a little card which grants us nobility from the Imperium. Yeah, it was really neat, and really cool guy. And on his way out, I mean, just so gracious. He just gave this really sincere He said, thanks for supporting my game, guys.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. You know,
That was
because
cool.
there's a guy who
I still fondly remember the little black and red books that
oh yeah,
that I used to have, and they were a little smaller, but we had starships. It was great.
now this is a guy though who has every right to brag. I mean, he goes way back, but he was very humble, just really a gracious person. Really good to meet him. Finally, I've been waiting, good grief, 30 some odd years to meet this guy. Seriously. So, and the last thing was off the books, and I have to tell you that I liked everything I ran and played in there, but what I really loved was this off the books game, which was Achtung Cthulhu.
Oh.
I had never played it before. I had played Call of Cthulhu, but this is using Pulp Cthulhu, which is a little bit different. And of course, with the new Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, things are also tweaked a little bit. You have a luck mechanic that you didn't used to have, which came in pretty handy in my case. But essentially, we played a group of proto MI5, the British Secret Service. Before them, there was another group, and I can't recall its name, but we were infiltrating into German-occupied Czechoslovakia. This is before the war, technically. This would have been 1936, I think. So before the invasion of Poland, and before Britain was involved in the war, but we were supposed to go in and investigate some strange goings on there, and it got really strange. It was a lot of fun. I really, that was a blast. In fact, I didn't have Call of Cthulhu 7th edition before then, and now it's in the mail on the way. So, yeah, very impressed with that. Very fun. So, yeah, a little bit of everything going on there. Outside of that, chatted with a lot of different people, spent a little bit of time talking to about Glowburn.
Good.
Several people, complete strangers, come up to me and say, "Hey, I love the podcast." Oh, great.
Oh,
good.
That's great.
Yeah, it was
thank
fantastic.
you, listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also spent some time with Doug Kovacs and had an interesting interaction as Doug and Jim Wampler came together at Doug's little art table, and I happened to be there talking to Doug at the time, and they started talking about art direction and art technique and so on and so forth, and it must have been, good grief, a half hour that I just sat there kind of absorbing all the things they were talking about. And learned a few things, saw a few illustrations that you'll see popping up on G+, I'm sure.
Oh, good.
Saw them in process as Doug was inking some of them. And learned a lot about how the art direction goes behind the scenes, really, in Goodman games. So that was awesome.
And it is massive amounts of art. I mean, just every module, the core books, there's just drawings and drawings and drawings, and we are grateful.
Yeah, and more to come. One of the future episodes that we'd like to do at some point is to talk about that art in Mutant Crawl Classics, and we'll see if maybe we can pull in some guests to enlighten us a little bit. I'm hoping.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But anyway, yeah, fantastic con. I was utterly exhausted. I think I'm finally back on my feet again. But yeah, great time. If you have a convention, even if it's a small one, near where you're at, take the time and spend a little bit of money and go and enjoy that. There's just bonding that takes place there, as you would expect in any kind of convention. It's just awesome. And the games are great. It was great to be introduced to new games. It's really great to reconnect with old friends. That's for me the kind of cherry on top, is just reconnecting with people. And I need to mention just a short plug. When I ran Lamentations of Foreign Haddad Swilinko, I ran that under the Gaming and BS rubric. Gaming and BS is a podcast done by Brett and Sean, who are local here to the Madison area. They sponsored a number of people running games, which was cool because we had our own little private area where you could actually hear people talk. It was kind of amazing because some areas you can't hear people talk.
No.
So, and then they gave me this, I've got it right here in my hand, this Gaming and BS pint cup, whatever, pint glass. There we go.
Yeah, pint.
I'm not a drinker, so I'm only going to ever have water in this thing probably. But anyway, it was very cool. Very nice of them to run that as well.
That's great.
So yeah, and I think the other than Gamehole, my second edition group has been kind of quiet last couple of weeks with the elections and everything else. We decided to take a little bit of time off, and yeah, that's where we're at.
Well, thanks very much for that. That sounds exciting. I guess while we're down here in the shelter, I found some comm systems here in the
Uh-huh.
wall. Let me open this up. I'm gonna tap in. I think I'm getting some signals.
Okay.
Hold on for some voices of the ancient ones.
All right.
Voices of the Ancient Ones.
Well, this is an incoming wave from DM Kojo. Here's a loudspeaker switch. I'm gonna let you hear it too.
All right.
Hello, gentlemen. This is DM Kojo calling. Just wanted to give a con report of experience from UConn, which is a convention in Ypsilanti, Michigan, that I attended with my oldest son, who is 11 years old. The convention is one that's a small convention, but it is growing and has some pretty good guests, especially considering it's a smaller con. Some of the guests this year were game designer John Wick, Bill Webb of Frog God Games, Stacy Delorfano, the founder of Contessa, and who's working also on the new edition of Swords and Wizardry, as well as Brendan LaSalle from Goodman Games, who is the creator of the X-Crawl game and has written some DCC material as well. The event I really want to talk about, of course, is the Mutant Crawl Classics event that my son and I played in Saturday night. This was run by Adam Miskevich, who you guys may know from the Metal Gods of Ur-Haddad fanzine or the Drink Spin Run podcast. Adam's a good friend of mine, and he runs a great game. In fact, one of the first times I ever played in a DCC game, Adam was running it at GaryCon. So the interesting thing about Mutant Crawl Classics at this stage in its development, which is that the core book hasn't come out yet, of course, is that I think everybody's kind of filling in the gaps in their own way when they run an MCC game. And so whether that is using things I've seen Mutant Future use, Gamma World use, Metamorphosis Alpha, supplemental stuff to fill in the gaps until we get the full-fledged rule set. And of course the MCC information that was in the free RPG Day module and last year's Goodman Games Gen Con guide. So one thing I really liked about how Adam runs his game in particular, something I've never experienced before. Instead of getting pre-generated characters, we simply got a 3x5 index card. And we didn't roll up any stats initially. All we did is came up with a basic character concept. We picked if we were going to be mutants or humans. And the mutants rolled some basic characteristic stats, what made them kind of physically look like mutants. And then Adam has us only roll our stats when it comes up to be relevant in the actual game. So until I needed to know how many hit points my character had, I didn't roll a stamina score. When you need to roll a score for whatever reason, if you roll a low score, Adam basically gives you 2 mulligans, as he calls them, where you can move a score from the one that you were rolling to a different score. Kind of as a dump stat, I guess. Surprisingly, intelligence seemed to be the main dump stat that most people used in the game. But the system that he was using, it really actually made things flow quickly and interesting, and we found that the concepts of the characters kind of grew organically instead of us getting a pre-gen and then trying to kind of decide what that character is going to be like based on their stats and things. So overall, I thought it was a pretty cool way to do it. Nothing I've ever experienced before, but I really enjoyed it. Adam also had us come up with powers on the fly and come up with backstory information on the fly, in some cases asking other players to provide the backstory or plot twist information that had to do with other players' characters. So kind of this round the table kind of thing, and we all kind of played off each other. It was a very cool narrative style of running a game, and I believe Adam has used this in other games he's run in the past. So although it's not exclusive to an MCC game, it certainly is an interesting way to get introduced to it. The game itself, don't want to give too many spoilers because I believe Adam's looking to maybe at some point publish this adventure, but kind of your basic idea of players start out in a village. It's Terra AD, Jim Wampler's setting as he's described it so far. And players are basically off to a place called the Palace of Ghosts, which is a place that's kind of been taboo and forbidden, but warriors have been lost exploring it, and there's this big mystery. And the MacGuffin, if you will, is that we've received communications from believed to be the Palace of Ghosts, and we want to go investigate and see the AI that runs it is contacting the different shaman characters within our party. So along the way, lots of interesting things. We ran into different types of creatures. We ran into defenses that the palace has. Eventually able to make our way inside the palace, and again, don't want to have any spoilers here, but some cool surprises inside the building as well. So the things I really enjoy about Mutant Crawl Classics in particular that Adam really emphasized was the creative use of technology and artifacts and things that our players had, things that some players basically had other players in the game have because of the way Adam ran the game. For example, I got to decide what kind of equipment my son's character had, and so I had him have just like some a pair of those metal stress balls and a wire whisk, and these were things that were artifacts that were important to him. Obviously they don't have any kind of specific value in and of themselves, but in a Mutant Crawl Classic setting, you're certainly able to use things like that in creative ways, and I thought that was a good kind of fun thing to give him, objects that an 11-year-old would know and understand and be able to come up with some creative ways to use. Interestingly enough, during the initial character concept phase of the game, my son decided that my character was not going to be his character's father. And so one thing that came out of that is he made reference to something about my dad's not a mutant. So Adam passed me a 3x5 card with some writing on it, and when I looked at it, secretly it said that I was a secret mutant, even though I was supposed to be a human character. And so that was something that I really thought about as I played the game. When was I going to reveal this mutant power? How was that revelation going to affect my character and things like that? So that was a lot of fun. One other thing that made Adam's game really interesting was that it was a nighttime game for one, and we were playing in a conference room, and Adam had us dim the lights and had brought a couple black light lamps. And the black light was really, just a cool ambiance thing. There was not a specific thing in the adventure that tied into it, but I thought it was kind of cool. It brought a little spookiness, a little eeriness to it, and put us in a place where our characters would be experiencing this if they were actually exploring this strange ancient building. And so I felt like it kind of put us on edge, just like our characters would have been on edge, which was a very cool thing to do at a con game like that. So I was impressed with the on-the-fly GMing that Adam did, considering I knew he did not have the entire rule set at his disposal. And as I said, I think your mileage may vary with Mutant Crawl Classics because every game master is going to run it probably a different way with different supplements and other pieces from other games to guide them. So overall, I think that right now we're getting a extra burst of creativity in the MCC world because we're all doing it a little differently. It'll be interesting to see once the rule set comes out how close some of us were, or how we mesh our current campaigns that involve MCC into a more official campaign setting or official rule set once the book comes out. So I'm very excited about that myself. Also, in addition to the MCC, it's worth noting that I did play in Brendan LaSalle's X-Crawl game. I'd never played X-Crawl before. For those who don't know, it's basically a combination of pro wrestling and the Running Man movie, where you play characters who are essentially DCC characters, but they are in a kind of an arena that's been set up for them to combat different crazy beasts. And the X-Crawl, I think, ties actually well into the Mutant Crawl Classics because anything goes, much like Mutant Crawl Classics. So Brendan had velociraptors flying biplanes, dive bombing us, and he had fantasy type creatures like cyclopses and demon creatures, as well as high tech things sometimes too. So it was kind of a cool blending of the technology and the fantasy, which again is very much, I think, what MCC and DCC can be like when you mesh them together. So I really think that X-Crawl could be a good launching point for Campaign 2, especially now that X-Crawl is the latest version. It sounds like it's going to be using DCC rules. I know that the recent X-Crawl adventures have all been DCC compatible, and so I'm hoping that down the road we see a DCC version of the X-Crawl rulebook, because I think that would also blend in very well with kind of maybe bridging the gap between DCC and MCC in a way. So overall, it was a great convention. Saw a lot of people that I really enjoy seeing when I get to go to cons. Kind of a smaller group than GaryCon, certainly, which is another convention I go to on a regular basis. I look forward to maybe playing some MCC at GaryCon in March. I'm not running any MCC myself, but I am running 2 DCC games that your listeners might be interested in. One is a character funnel, 0-level funnel for the players to go to a place called the Island of the Gonterzap. It's an adventure entirely based on creatures of my son Chase's design, and that's a lot of fun. I ran that last year, and we'll run it again this year. And the premise of that is that the characters are shipwrecked on this deserted island and have to fend for themselves there. I'm also running a level 4 DCC adventure that I've created called The Portal to the Plane of Probability. And without giving away too many spoilers for that, let's just say that certain DCC mechanics work differently in my adventure because of the nature of the location where the adventure is taking place. So that those are 2 DCC games that I'll be running at GaryCon that people can keep their eyes out for. And for what's worth, I'm also running 2 sessions of a Star Frontiers adventure for those who go back to the 80s and would love for people to take a look at that too. I'm running the same Star Frontiers adventure of my own creation, 2 different sessions. So hopefully that's something people would like to check out as well. So as far as that goes, that's my MCC Con report from UConn in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I appreciate what you guys do on the podcast. It's great stuff, and keep up the great work. I'm sure I will check in again sometime soon. Thanks. DM Kojo out.
Well, it was good to hear from DM Kojo. Glad to hear his report from his convention. Looking forward to hearing other people out there play, other sort of mutant-related games and science fantasy. What else we got here in the Voices of the Ancient Ones, Forrest?
Well, Bill, you remember we had a contest that we started a couple of episodes back.
I do.
When we talked to Reed Sanfilippo about Crawling Under a Broken Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave the challenge to our listeners to submit some artifacts, anything from the mundane to the not so mundane. And we have 2 winners so far.
Great.
They'll be receiving a complete set of Reed's Crawling Under a Broken Moon in PDF. And those winners are, first of all, Zach Pierce, who sent us the Easy 8 incubation cube. And then we have Michael Thompson, who sent us the brain jar for the Crawling Under a Broken Moon giveaway. We'll forego the details for now. They'll be in the show notes. They're useful, fun, and as usual, there's some random craziness associated with both of them.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Zach and to Michael, and looking forward to hear back from anybody who wants to. If you want to keep sending them in, keep on sending them in. We're not going to stop you.
Nope.
And we do have another one to give away, so let's hear from you. Send us your best artifacts, and we'll give you the contact information at the end of the show.
Great. And I'd like to point out we do have one iTunes 5-star review that we are thankful for. Keeper John, we appreciate it. He writes in, I'm looking forward to getting my MCC book next year, and this podcast is the perfect vehicle because it's rad reinforced. Yeah, we are. To take us to that fateful day of deliverance that we are all burning some luck looking for those PDFs and then finally those hardback books. So you will find our contact information at the end of the show. If you'd like to communicate with us, feel free to share what weird post-apocalyptic science fantasy world you're tromping through right now. And if you find that old esoteric mutant book, movie, or comic out there, mention that to us too. We're always collecting this stuff. We're trying to set up our scenes for our players and things like that. And well, you know what time it is, don't you, Forrest?
I know exactly what time it is, Bill.
It is time for our
Great Disaster.
Here we go.
The Great Disaster.
Go, 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 go!
Well, Forrest, we're here to talk about Metamorphosis Alpha.
Yes, we are.
For those who are not familiar with this game, it was published back in '76, and as a author of Dyson Man, David M. Ewate, did his research, and he says it is notable as the first role-playing game with a science fiction setting.
Right, and it just predates Traveler, that other role-playing game in the science fiction setting, by about a year, I believe.
Okay, and I really, when I start thinking back to my time, Traveler, Star Frontiers, all that stuff, sort of, once you get way past it, it all seems like it came out together. But it was the first one out there.
Yes, it was. Yeah, and predated Gamma World. We'll talk a little bit about that later, I think, about the tie-ins there. But yeah, it's the early bird.
As a matter of fact, that very first edition back in '76 stood by itself out there for 20 years. It wasn't until '94 that a second edition came out. It came out in '94, and this was a very tumultuous time for TSR.
Yes,
they were sort of in a decline. And if you've read any of the Empires of Imagination, if you read any of those books, and there's been a couple on it, that this was a really, really rough time financially, politically, within the company. And so when the second edition came out, it went from its custom engine to an amazing engine. Mm-hmm. And TSR, they released that in '93. It was used for the second edition and then canceled in '94.
Yeah, whoops.
Yeah, whoops. It was, matter of fact, it gets weirder after that, because right after that, they came out with Alternity game and engine, and that had a little over a 2-year lifespan as well before they axed that.
That whole time was surreal, not just in the system, but boy, corporately, that sounds like a surreal time.
Yeah.
not a very fun really. Time for TSR.
It really does. I got tickled when Chris Perkins, in one of his podcasts, in the D&D podcast, was talking about that's when he got hired.
Oh, boy.
Finally got on. He'd been doing some internship stuff, finally got on. And on his way in, the company was sold to WotC, and the offices were closed there in Geneva.
Oh, worst timing ever.
Worst timing ever. So they told him to keep driving west, and they would see him out there.
That's a long ways to Seattle.
So it seems like 8 years after that, we had a third edition, and then just shortly after that, a fourth edition. And that's where I came up with my research. But you found I was a little wrong.
A little bit, yeah. There was I don't know if we call it a fifth edition or what, but it's a Metamorphosis Alpha role-playing game put out by Signal Fire Studios. And if I understand correctly, I was not a part of the Kickstarter, but I believe that the Kickstarter just delivered just recently. So anyway, yeah, there's a brand new one out there.
Now this is officially licensed by Ward Company, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I looked on the stuff you pointed me to, and I don't think I ever saw the term 5th edition at all.
No, I don't. I didn't see that either, but you kind of have to consider it as such, just because of the different dice mechanic it's using, and I mean, Jim Mort has his name on it for sure, and he had some oversight, but I think it does constitute something new and something different than the previous editions.
And it uses what they call a System 26 engine, which is, and it probably gets its name from 2D6, which
yes.
you do roll that a lot to see if you succeed in things. But it seemed kind of very rules light, which is okay.
Yeah, I like it. It's slick. It's really slick.
What I thought it was very interesting, and I had to go find the old module. You and I have talked about this, about going from the fantasy setting of Dungeons and Dragons to the mutant world of Gamma World, the mutant setting of Gamma World, and all this stuff. That was really set in place very early on.
Yes, yeah, it was. You look back to you're referring to the module S3, correct?
Yep, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Right,
yep.
Right. Which was pretty divisive back in the day. Some people really did not like the idea of having lasers mixed with their swords. It was kind of the anti-Reese's peanut butter cup thing.
Well, right on the cover it looks like a warrior, but he doesn't have on a helmet.
Right.
He has on a space helmet. It is very clearly a space helmet on the cover. Well, they make no bones about what this is.
And somebody's shooting a laser pistol at this bizarre tentacled creature.
Yep.
As well. Yeah, elves and lasers. Go figure that one out.
So the linkage, and if anyone's not familiar with it, the linkage in this module is that they're actually exploring a Warden type class vehicle.
Right. Yeah, a similar vehicle. It's spherical shape, a lot smaller, of course. One of the catches to the module was that there is the power is sent out to the different laser guns, power armor, so on and so forth, through kind of a transponder from the vehicle. So after you get outside of a certain range, your stuff doesn't work anymore.
Oh, that's how they fix future problems.
Exactly. That's how they kind of keep it contained. So yeah, interesting mechanic there that a lot of people conveniently forget when they're running that in a campaign. You see the dwarf end up with a black ray gun. Well, how close are you to this crashed spaceship? Really.
That's pretty good. I didn't catch that, but that would definitely a GM's helper there.
And the thing is, it's not out of the popular fantasy science fiction time stream. I think of the movie Wizards. It came back out in 1977. And that was all about, it wasn't lasers necessarily, it's more slug throwers and tanks, but you had this mix of technology. Well, you did have robots, so you had this mix of technology and magic. So, I mean, totally within keeping with the times. I honestly, I can kind of understand why some people were upset about it, some of the purists, but on the other hand, I love Wizards, so I thought it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. So so if we crack open, first time I cracked open and what I did was I went and got the PDF on Metamorphosis Alpha First Edition.
Yep.
And I cracked it open, and there's the letter from Gygax and Bloom.
Yes.
How many people would have heard of D&D or Metamorphosis Alpha? Not many.
No.
Not to where it is now with what we have with Twitch and everything like that. It would be very few.
Oh,
and,
no.
It was neat. They're still explaining what this is with that. Things like, phrasing like referee and players will develop their own game world as they go along. He's saying, nothing's set here. You're going to build this as you go.
Right. They create the starship is the quote. Yeah.
Yep. And if you look in the book, then there's some sort of ovals about, what might be like each level and some paragraph descriptions, but you're to build it out.
Oh yeah, They didn't have pre-made modules really for this.
Nope. He also points out in this opening that this is a continuous game, which need never end.
Yeah.
Did you see that article that had come out on the web? It floated around sort of the communities we're in about the guy who has been playing the same campaign for 40 years since the inception.
Yeah, I didn't read it in depth, but I did see reference to that.
Yeah, I guess that's the epitome of this game never need to end.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like an obsession to me, but
it does. It does.
I get bored too easily. It's like, give me a few years and it's time to move on and do something different.
and then the final thing I like out of this opening letter was, those with existing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns may wish to incorporate ideas from this game into their campaign worlds.
There you go.
We're on system number 2.
Right.
And he's already saying mix and match them.
Well, you have to consider that Jim Ward was in Gary Gygax's group, and Gary Gygax actually asked Jim to create this game because he didn't, frankly, have time. He was too busy with the fantasy side of things. So he invited James Ward to go ahead and create this game. So they're all tied together. They're all a happy little community down there in Lake Geneva at the time.
As we get into it, the next thing that struck me is kind of amazing. I get to the part, it says who you need to play. It goes, you need 1 referee and 2 to 24 players. 24 players, Forrest?
Oh yeah. Oh heck yeah. The reasons are twofold, I think. Well, actually, there's one main reason, and that is if you look at the historical context at the time, Metamorphosis Alpha was published in 1976. And really, at that time, role-playing games were still kind of emerging and separating themselves from wargaming.
Okay.
Now, having 24 players in a game is not out of place at all in a giant war game. If you're taking up a school gymnasium with a bunch of people with Napoleonic armies against each other, 24 people, you could do that. Yeah. Somebody has to.
Is that where you're using like the big long sticks to sort of like reach out on the table and push the men around?
Very similar. Yep.
That's how I picture it in my head anyway.
Yeah, and I've seen that. I've actually played in a couple of large games. One pseudo war game I think of was when I played Ogre Miniatures at a convention years and years and years ago, and there were several players out there playing that. And again, this was on a really big area in a room.
Yeah.
And then in terms of role playing, though, last year at GaryCon, there was a session of Dungeon Crawl Classics under the Black Powder Black Magic rubric. And I don't remember exactly how many people were involved, but I think it had to be around 20 people. And we had 2 separate tables, and this was kind of a Weird West type thing. It was 6 guns and sorcery, if you will. And we had at my table, we were the townies, the people living in the town, and then there were the outlaws at the other table. and we had our own individual things that we were doing, and then at the end kind of had the big apocalyptic confrontation between the townies and the outlaws, and it was crazy. I mean, literally like 20 people around a table, every person trying to take an action. Thankfully we had really good judges who kept things under control, because it could have veered out really easily out of control. And it's funny too, I guess on the outlaw side there was some PvP action going on there as well in the midst of all this. So yeah.
Well, of course, they're all outlaws.
Barely controlled chaos, and it was a blast. Now the townies lost, unfortunately. Yeah, things went horribly awry, and they had a wizard who cast a kind of a cloud kill spell that decimated, or more than decimated, the townies. But it was fun, and as I understand it, they've been running that. I think they ran that at North Texas later as well. I don't know if the numbers were as large or not, but you can run a game with 20 people. Yeah. It's just, it requires some discipline.
In expectation settings, of course.
Yeah. And granted, we started with 2 judges, right? One at each table of 10.
Right.
And then they colluded as they needed to, and I think in the end they were kind of co-judging this crowd of 20. So yeah, having one judge and 20 people, I wouldn't recommend that. Or one referee. 2 referees and 24 people, maybe. Yeah. Three referees, even better. Anyway, and like I said earlier, the Punjar 50,000 that we had 2 separate referees doing that, or judges doing that. We had Dave Beatty was judging, okay, and at my table, Doug Kovacs was judging, and then in the end, yeah, it became a PvP free-for-all. So yeah, you can do 24 players. It's just usually going to descend into chaos.
So the other conception I had when I was reading through some of this front stuff was that I got the feeling that there was still this containment. Yeah. Like, much like I don't want the PCs to say that they're going to go to, some other part of the world, and then all of a sudden I'm not prepared for that, so I'm going to put them in a dungeon. I got the sense that you were on a ship because I need them sticking to 14 different levels, or maybe because they can't get to the 3 different levels, because that's what I've prepared, right?
Yeah, however, no, Jim Ward, there was an article in the Dungeoneer, number 7, and he had an article called Notes on Metamorphosis Alpha by the Designer, stating his authority, huh?
Absolutely.
I respect my authority. He was pretty explicit about not letting the stated size of the Warden limit the extent of the adventuring area. And in fact, I pulled a quote from that article where he says, "I couldn't care less what the odd proportions do to the outer shape of the ship."
Right, because no one's going to be on the outside looking at the ship.
Right, nobody's gonna know.
And if anyone's going to draw it, they're going to draw it however they see it.
Exactly. So I mean, yes, it was a limited area, but he gave any referee an out. You build it like you think it should be. So yeah, very, very sandboxy feel to it, even though it might seem like a limited sandbox at first.
And it seemed like that the whole colored band thing was, it would be a sort of a MacGuffin to, the next campaign is going to take place on levels 2, 3, and 4, right?
Right.
And that's how you could sort of subdivide these arcs and things like that.
And that translated later in Gamma World to the identity cards. You had the wrist bracelets in Metamorphosis Alpha, which became the cards, color-coded cards in Gamma World, which allowed you different access to different things. It's kind of interesting because there was no leveling mechanism there, but the cards kind of act as a de facto leveling mechanism. You can't access certain areas. You don't have certain controls unless you have the right card.
Okay.
So I think that's a game mechanic way of essentially imposing something like levels, or giving the players opportunity to be rewarded with something like levels. You get the right wrist bracelet or the right card depending on your game, and you can have all kinds of control. You could have some real power as a result of that. It's almost like Wizard gaining his 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th level spells. You get the right card, and boy, you've got access to all kinds of stuff that you didn't have before.
Well, there's nothing more laser focusing for a player than that single door in the in that steel shaft in the center of the world that won't open for them.
Right. Right.
Until they that then becomes the quest. It's like, I got to get that door open.
Right. They'll spend every resource they have just trying to get that door open, which is great when it's empty behind it.
Or an elevator, you can go up or down. You have no information.
Yeah.
You don't know which way's best.
Yep. Well, and depending on your access, you can only go up so many levels.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
true. Before you
Or-
need another
Right.
wristband.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting. It's not just the wristbands. Like if you were on the ship and you were like a high level, you had a ring that did the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
So this is what they call a generation ship, and I had picked up, and it's upstairs. I'm not going to get it, but it's basically an Isaac Asimov compiled list of short stories, and they're actually broken down by the types of ships.
Right.
There's hyperdrive, there is faster than light, and then one of his sections he mentioned, and in the whole premise of the forward of this book is talking about how we might really get from one side of the galaxy to the other, or from one inhabitable planet to another.
Right.
And he talks about that one of the feasible mechanisms is you build a ship, you put just enough people on it to run it, you have it self-sustaining with air and food, which might mean large sections that have trees in it and plants.
Yep.
For converting carbon dioxide to oxygen, this kind of things, and it would have to be massive scale, and it would of course accelerate halfway there and then decelerate the rest, and this kind of stuff.
Right.
So generation ships is a real concept that is a possibility, but I think as the science fiction authors, Jim Warden and Gary and all them start looking at this, it is just a test bed of adventure. Right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And when you start thinking about that, you get some really good stories.
Well, and if I could just interject here, lest people think this is just pure science fiction. There is actually an organization called the 100-Year Starship that is looking to build a starship within the next 100 years. And one of the models that they are considering is a long-term colony type ship that will travel close. Well, I think it was something like 12% of the speed of light, something to that effect, which will still take us, generations to get to the next location. But it's a real thing. They're really and they're putting some serious money and research into this. Yeah, interesting stuff. So truth is stranger than fiction in this case.
So let's talk a little bit about some of this fiction that's out there. That if you Metamorphosis Alpha or Gamma World or MCC players want to, tap in for ideas and other things, let's talk a little bit about what they can check out.
Sure. There are a number of novels out there, at least a movie that I know of. Let me address the one novel that I know well, and that's Gene Wolfe's Book of the Long Sun.
Okay.
And this is Gene Wolfe has a series of 3 sets of novels. Book of the Short Sun, or Book of the New Sun, Book of the Long Sun, Book of the Short Sun. And the Book of the Long Sun is in the middle, where humanity, or at least a subset of humanity, is traveling on colony ships. And they've been there so long that they've pretty much forgotten. I mean, there's kind of a mythic substrate there that we're on this journey, but they don't know where they're going. They don't know when they're going to get there. They don't even know how long they've been on there.
That seems to be a common element to some of these stories.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that is their great disaster essentially was getting on the ship and forgetting everything. Or most things anyway.
Which tells you that these speculative fiction writers are really concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of a existential angst to be thrust out into the cosmos in this giant tube, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you have thousands of you in this giant tube going who knows where, who knows when you're going to get there. So that would be, even in a large colony ship, they'd be kind of claustrophobic, right? You know your bounds, and you're not going to get out of them. You don't want to get out of them.
They make that pretty evident in the beginning of the series, The 100.
Yep.
Where they're up on that space station and their clothes are ragged because they don't have ways to manufacture it.
Right.
Their big problem is limited air, and they make that a big deal. And I think that's a really interesting start of that show.
Yeah. It's funny. When we talk about Metamorphosis Alpha, one thing that never really seems to happen is the Warden never runs out of air,
right?
Which I find interesting. I mean, of course, they've got robots and life support mechanisms and whatnot, but what happens if the air runs out? If there's a breach in that thing, there's going to be some big problems there.
Yeah, I know. Another one of the novels is called Non-Stop, and I think it has another title too, but I don't have that in the notes here. It's interesting because you start out with a culturally primordial tribe in which curiosity is discouraged and life is solitary, poor, nasty, and brutish in short, which is kind of a little bit how we think about MCC, Terra AD starting out, as you're starting out in a primitive tribe.
Right.
With, going, go forth. And, we haven't gone forth, maybe. But someone deciding they're going to go investigate. Matter of fact, it says that they learned that the spacecraft is a multi-generation ship. So part of the book is they're figuring this out, and there's other further plot twists that go along. But they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. Well, and that's, if I remember correctly, that's kind of the premise of the Metamorphosis Alpha, is people don't know that they're necessarily on a spaceship. In fact, when I the one time I've run Metamorphosis Alpha, the first edition, I ran it for my kids. In a game that I called Hoops and Hoppers, and it was about basically take Watership down and put it on the spaceship Warden. And my kids had no idea, and a couple of their friends too, they had no idea that they were on a spaceship, right? They thought they were just going through through Earth. And after they explored quite a while, then they finally ran up against a metal wall that they couldn't get past, and they finally figured out they're on a spaceship, right? Their characters didn't, of course, but they did as players, but they had no idea, and they were stunned. I mean, what? Are you serious? And it was awesome. I mean, it was really awesome to see their reaction, that they had discovered finally that they're on this generation ship, that they had no idea. They thought they were just cruising around, good old Earth.
Yep.
So anyway,
I had a D&D group that I sent to the Lands of Chaos in sort of the same fashion, and they were on it. They thought they were still in the dungeon, and when they came upon a bridge, for a ship, that they were very surprised. Yeah, it's a cool little twist. I like twists like that, which sort of change what you knew about things as the world as you know it.
I think some of that just has to do with that loss of knowledge, loss of the scientific method. We talked about that. I think it never made it into our first episode, but we talked about that. You and I did, about the scientific method being lost, and that's the great tragedy of an apocalypse. It's,
right.
You can't figure stuff out anymore. The Robert A. Heinlein book that you mentioned, Orphans of the Sky. Mm-hmm. Similar idea. There's a crew that's forgotten the purpose, and they've forgotten the nature of the ship, and they lapse back into this superstitious mindset, and it really reminds me of Lord of the Flies, if you recall that.
Right. I remember that.
The kids descend into barbarity, and they create their own mythology with the boar's head on a spike, and the downed fighter pilot with his parachute. They create this mythology. So anyway, I think of the Warden kind of like, it's like Lord of the Flies in space,
Yeah. And then you fold in the fact that you're on a spaceship, and then there's a whole, beyond forgetting who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, you still got all the other problems of being on a spaceship in the middle of literally nowhere, with no help from anything else, and all the problems that can go on that way.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, other books like Greg Bear, Hull 03, a 2010 novel that you got mysterious circumstances there as well. And there's several, I think we have two of them here. In the back of my mind, there's a third one, a TV and movie that takes place. I think one of them, the one I can't remember, I think is on Netflix. And I'll have to see if I can find that and put it in the show notes. But one is called The Star Lost, and I never saw this. It's a Canadian U.S. TV series from '73. The premise is the ship contains these dozen of biospheres, each, kind of like the Warden, they're kilometers across. That's the distance, that's the size of scale we're working with. Right. And then they house people of different cultures. And then that starts to unfold when the ship goes into emergency mode.
Okay. Well, one that people might be more familiar with is the movie Pandorum, which came out in 2009, and it's a science fiction horror movie. The scale of it is a little bit smaller than you would think, because it starts off with one person waking up. One of the problems that keeps coming about in this movie, or becomes a central part of the plot, is that there's really no food. And so what do you do when there's no food? You turn to the Soylent Green method of food manufacturing, right?
Right.
And so pretty soon you have cannibalism as being a big part of this people trapped on this ship, and I won't spoil the ending, but boy, talk about a surprise, depressing ending. Holy cow! It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. But I don't mind science fiction horror either. So your mileage may vary.
Yep. Now, in reading through this, we get this game system in Metamorphosis Alpha, and we get a setting.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't see is any adventures.
Right.
Matter of fact, in the reprint that of the first edition that Goodman Games did, that James Ward does have he does finally come up with a module that is obviously very recent. It's called The Awakening.
Yep.
And that's in the PDF. And that explains it's got everything in there. It's kind of like introduction, GM notes, and it goes on and it talks about the different encounters you can have and stuff like that. So I started to look up with this game system because what was going on, we already talked about S3 Expedition Barrier Peaks, Tomb of Horrors, modules were coming out.
Right.
Guess how many modules I found published for the first edition in the first 20 years of its life?
Do you want my honest guess?
Yeah, give me your honest guess.
I would guess 0.
That's exactly right. I had gone out searching, looking, things like that. The closest I got was the first published module was in 2012.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I guess the concept was you have everything you need right here. You have, and what's included in the game is these mechanisms. You draw out your floor plan, your hex crawl of that layer of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
You draw it out, you fill it with stuff, you create these encounters, and you tell people to go.
Right. I mean, there is the example of the roundhouse modular dwelling unit.
Yep.
That's just a seed, really. That's not an adventure.
Well, as a matter of fact, that module that I first found, and it's called The House on the Hill, and it's by Craig J. Brain from Ward Company, and I'll put it in the show notes. Bryce Lynch did an excellent review on it.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it is that roundhouse modular dwelling unit. It is a mechanism and a list of additional information and tables, and even I think a form that you can use to sort of build. And it is for building adventures with those things, with that RHMDU.
Right, which is
really roll off the tongue.
which is really keeping in the mode of Metamorphosis Alpha and old school gaming. I mean, it's very sandboxy, and you're gonna randomly generate a lot of stuff on the fly, which I guess that makes it exciting for the referee and for the players. If you don't quite know what's coming.
Nope. The and then apparently in the back of that module was some more new content from Jim Ward. Adventure seeds, and matter of fact, if you go to metamorphosisalpha.net,
yep,
there is he mentions a couple more adventuring seeds. I got the sense that here's a seed, here's a hook, and then let's just see what happens. He's that kind of game master.
Yeah, it's very open and very loose, and he's not going to railroad anybody. Goodman Games has done a fair amount. Obviously, when they did the updated edition of Metamorphosis Alpha, they had several adventures in there and expansion material. The only one I own is called Robots Among Us,
right.
And there's similar 17 really short encounters, and
okay.
I love it, frankly. That caters to my DMing style. Maybe I'm just stubborn and don't like to be told what to do. But actually, what I ended up doing with my own campaign was taking 2 of the encounters and mashing them together into one, and that worked really well. And it scared the crap out of my players. I'll tell you that much. Nothing like primitives with robots popping up here and there, especially giant mechanical tanks. Yeah, nothing like that to scare your party away. So anyway, I really like that one.
Of those, my 2 favorites that I would look into would be the mutation manual,
yep,
which comes with more than 200 new mutations for Metamorphosis Alpha,
right.
And which is amazing because the book includes a lot of mutation to
mm-hmm.
begin with.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, the book alone blows Gamma World 6E away with the number of mutations.
Yep.
And then the Warden Armory, which is 150 pieces of new combat equipment, which I thought I'd like to own that too.
I need to get that. I just absolutely need to get that. If for nothing else, at least let the players blow themselves away.
Absolutely. But apparently, we haven't seen the crown jewel of this Goodman Games expansion material yet.
Which would be the Epsilon City.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff.
That's to be released in March 15th next year, and it is a massive 272-page book for us.
Yeah, it's got some huge maps and everything as well. Is there a big supplement in there as well, an adventure supplement?
Yep. So the on the module side, Michael Curtis wrote us a couple. Jim Wampler has one called The Captain's Table. Joe Bittman, he's got an adventure in there, as well as John Hook. Now, I like this one. Even James Ward, well, Mr. Ward has Warden Adventures, which is 8 2-page mini encounters.
Yeah, of course.
So of course, and then I like this last one that I thought was intriguing. It's called The Long Hard Mile, and it is a short adventure. Is designed to be run solo.
Right. Which back in that day, you know, I think back there was Tunnels and Trolls had a number of solo modules as well.
Okay.
If I remember right, Death Trap Equalizer. Anyway, they had a series of solo modules. So back then, you know, back in the late 70s, that was a thing. Nowadays, with the wonders of the interwebs, you
Right.
don't have to have solo modules. But I remember playing the Tunnels and Trolls thing solo. You know, sitting there in my bedroom rolling dice, and I had fun.
It was interesting because you were always at that time, you know, looking for people to play, and you had these books and you wanted to play so bad, and I remember wanting and I would like latch on to solo adventures whenever I could find them.
Yeah.
I remember getting the D&D 4th edition starter set when I got back into dungeons, into role playing games in general, and I brought that starter set back probably to a hotel room, opened it up, and I was just delighted because it was a solo adventure.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. So, you know, now is just as good a time as any is to jump into some Metamorphosis Alpha. Thanks to Goodman Games. Just amazing amount of content out there.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that it's coming out, you know, around the same time as they're, you know, re-releasing Judges Guild stuff. On one hand, it is nostalgic. On the other hand, it's kind of, I don't know, resurrecting those basic old school games. I just it's a neat time for me and people my age, you know, because we get to be 10 again, and there's something good about that.
I remember in the Save or Die podcast where they're interviewing Mr. Ward, that he was very complimentary on the stuff. At that time, he's like, the people over the Judges Guild were just doing some amazing things.
Yeah, they were.
And he was really impressed with their work.
Yeah, that I think the eventual loss of Judges Guild was really one of the biggest losses to the entire industry. Man, they I remember as a kid discovering their stuff, and you know, they had the little newsprint, you know, so it was not super duper expensive. It's like, oh, I could actually afford to buy this stuff without having to ask my parents for extra money, you know.
When I was 14, 15, 16, I had lots of comic books coming in, but for some reason right now I can't seem to afford all the comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work through this economic conundrum.
Yep.
Of how that math works out now that I have a great job and I can't afford comics.
Part of it, I think, is just having access to everything. You know, the internet is a blessing and a curse. Now, you know what's out there, and you know what you don't have, right?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I gotta tell you, every now and then I'll tweet it out, but I'll add up the value of all the stuff that's on my drive-through
man.
RPG wish list.
Yep.
Multiple hundreds of dollars, and I keep every now and then I go, you know, I really don't need that, so I'll take something off. But then I've added 3 while I'm doing that session. I know,
and then there's always a question: do I want this in PDF or do I want the physical copy? You know, and
yeah.
I like the physical copy most of the time, but boy, that gets to be an expensive habit.
Well, you know, that's funny. That's what the new players that I've brought into DCC are sitting there going, all right, we've played off the PDF. I got to get a book.
Yeah.
I got to get a hard copy. I don't feel like I'm really playing this until I get a hard copy.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I think of Metamorphosis Alpha. I don't have a hard copy. I have the PDF, but I don't have a hard copy of the original old first edition or second printing, whichever. I think second printing is the common PDF that's flying around out there. Yeah, one of these days I'll have to get that old book smell back into my shelf.
So I was, as I was looking through this first edition, this system, I don't think we have time to do it here, but I was trying to figure out how to create a monster, because they have some really cool names for creatures.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of wolfoids, bearoids, animaloids, you know, things like that.
Yep.
But they get into stuff like piercers and shocker beast and wing biters. I mean, I love the names of some of these things. And then it seems like kind of like you have to do the levels of the ship. You got to build this thing out, right?
Yeah.
It is. There are some instructions, and I guess people would come up with their way they did it.
Well, they do have some limited examples, and I'll tell you where I really think that that they excel is in the plants. Mutated plants are just nasty. They don't have anything in terms of stats, but just
Right.
the concepts are just brutal. And I think if you apply this to Mutant Crawl Classics, you have a hothouse jungle, right? So you're
Yeah.
going to have a lot of plants. This is not going to be a barren desert wasteland for the most part. And I'll tell you, I think I mentioned in our last episode, my MCC crew barely avoided getting. It would have been a total party kill if they hadn't just gotten extremely lucky when they happened upon a patch of what's called Zeeth grass in Gamma World, just purple grass that teleports its seeds into you and then dissolves you from the inside out. Oh, it's brutal. And they just plain got lucky. And if anything, you'd be more afraid of the plants than you would of the manimals or the robots or whatever, because good grief, every time you touch something, it's going to try to kill you. How do people eat in a place like that? How do you harvest fruit? The fruit might just explode on you, or the tree might bludgeon you. Who knows?
That was even part of Warden on the website. He in his guidance on designing encounters, he says pick a stat that they have, radiation or strength or dexter. Pick a stat that they have and then challenge them on that.
Yeah.
And then he goes off saying intelligent talking plants that are just trying to get themselves a little more of the minerals that are on your flesh.
Right.
Will be found among ropey thorn vines looking to grab anything, while radiated and poisonous seed pods are being tossed at the characters, from plants from the trail.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of horrific, and I was like reading this, going, "Well, this is getting worse and worse and worse. Stop talking."
It's survival of the fittest. It really is.
Yeah.
And it kind of harks back to if you look at some of the 1950s and early 1960s truly cheesy, low budget science fiction movies. Inevitably there's some kind of mutant Venus flytrap, or some
sort of vine that's
yeah,
grab the scantily clad woman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a standard trope back then, and I kind of cool that Jim Ward kind of evolved it to the next level. It's like Hammer horror meets science fiction B movies.
Right.
In the form of a plant.
And then if the plants are going to kill you, then it doesn't look good if you're talking to a robot.
Right.
Either it's going to try to kill you outright, or you'll get to interact with it, and then it'll try to kill you.
Right. Yeah, robots are not beholden to the laws of robotics, or if they were, then if I remember right, the premise is that the radiation cloud that hit the Warden kind of fried the circuits, the logic circuits in the robots, and a lot of them went crazy, which has some interesting implications for artificial intelligence. But and I'm not just talking about Terminator, but anyway, I don't want to get too philosophical on it, but it does have some interesting implications.
I think you've even told us a tale of coming across some gardening robots that were problematic.
Oh yeah, well, it was just trying to teach people the exact right way to plant and water things, and if you didn't learn it, he disciplined you and taught you. It was all well intentioned.
In Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, there is just oodles of handouts.
Yeah.
Which are drawings, and a lot of those are robots, and so you could definitely, if you need those, that'd be a great mine to get your hands on that old module.
I remember
for some good art.
I remember running that at one point, and there were people who were kind of familiar with the module, and I had the handouts printed out. They entered the gymnasium, the workout area, and I put down the picture of the robot with lifting the weights. With one arm, and the players knew enough that they all just groaned when I put that down. They're like, "Oh no!" And, to which I said, "Yes." Anyway, it was. I think they actually survived that encounter, so wasn't all bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm got a wristband on my arm right now, and I see a door here. Let me open it. Hey, it looks like a laboratory.
Well, let's go see it.
Yeah, you want to do some mutagenesis?
Let's check it out.
Mutagenesis.
Well, in this lab, I see sorts of beakers and everything. I think we can cook something up. You seem to have the The stove turned up pretty high over there, Forrest. Why have you turned up the stove pretty high?
Oh, it's running really hot. And the reason is because my mutagenesis item is called the Thermococcus gammatolerans omega serum.
I've been waiting this whole time to hear you pronounce that. Do it again for me.
Thermococcus gammatolerans omega serum. I've been practicing that. I've had to. And usually we're taking things from other game systems or from media. This is actually an item that I have concocted from real life, real world science. The only magazine that I actually subscribe to a hard copy of is Discover Magazine, and I find all kinds of crazy stuff in there that my players learn to hate. But I did put in the show notes a couple of non-technical or less technical articles about the Thermococcus gammatolerans, which is sort of an amoeba. Technically, it's an archaeon, I believe is what it's called.
Okay.
But it's an incredibly resilient organism. And if I remember correctly, it can take radiation to the tune of something like 6,000 times what would normally kill a human.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredibly resilient stuff. It repairs itself, and they find it deep in the ocean near thermal vents. It was just recently discovered. If I remember right, it was 2014. I don't have that note right in front of me, but I think it was 2014, 2013. So very recently that they actually discovered this species. But again, it's able to withstand an incredible amount of radiation. One of the links that I provided is leads to a Quora page, and the question on the Quora page is, what animals can survive a nuclear war? And
I scrolled down that list. I thought it was very fascinating.
Yeah, it was. There's a nasty looking wasp there. Of course, cockroaches are there. But the top of the list, the very top of the list, is this Thermococcus gammatolerans, which is just incredibly resilient. So I decided to turn this into an artifact.
Okay.
So Thermococcus gammatolerans omega serum, or TGOS for short, is an ancient concoction synthesized from the DNA of the extremophile Thermococcus gammatolerans, a microorganism capable of resisting radiation in doses, I put 1,000 times, but really it's 5,000 times more powerful than that necessary to kill a human being. This green glowing milky substance is always found in vacuum-sealed vials, syringes, or canisters. Now I set these at a tech level 5 and a complexity level 2 because it doesn't take that much to figure out how to use these vials, but the tech level needed to produce them is really high.
Right.
If removed from its container, TGOS becomes a mere sticky blob of glowing green goo after a few seconds contact with open air, mostly because it doesn't have the necessary heat to keep it alive. If immediately ingested or injected, however, TGOS becomes a powerful inoculant against radiation. For each dose ingested or injected, the recipient of TGOS automatically succeeds on the next D4 fortitude saves versus radiation. They do not roll to save, nor may they elect to fail a save. Some people like to fail saves so they can get mutations, right?
Right.
Doesn't work now for D4 saves. Furthermore, Glowburn has no effect on the next D4 attempts to use it.
Ooh. So
the judge needs to keep track of the number of saves that remain on that dose. Like most biotech, TGOS is not without side effects.
They probably can't even hear this podcast.
Probably true. For the first D3 hours after administration, the recipient must make an hourly DC-10 fortitude save or spike a high fever that fatigues him with the following effects. Attacks fall to every other round. Armor class is reduced by 3 points. Movement is reduced by 25%, and melee damage is reduced by 2 points. This effect lasts for 1 full hour. Remember, you have to check every hour for the first D3 hours. If the recipient does not suffer the effects of a fever, meaning they go through the 3 hours and don't, or they make all their saves, there is a 1% chance that the beneficial, and I put that in big quotation marks, beneficial effects of TGOS will be permanent. And in fact, it's rumored that some archaic alignments, especially those that espouse genetic purity, have weaponized TGOS by using vials of the substance in tranquilizer guns to suppress mutation.
Oh, it's like the X-Men movie.
Kind of, yep. That's the general idea. So there you have it. You need to suppress your mutant uprising. Go shoot them with tranq darts full of TGOS.
When I read this, my question came to my mind was, what if that thing then begin to evolve into animals or a species? And what would that look like, and what would its abilities be?
Yeah, well, immediately I just start getting mean thoughts in my mind about what to do to characters with that, Imagine a giant amoeba like that,
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Completely immune to all this stuff. Yeah, because those things, as I was reading correctly, where they live now is they're comfortable at 190 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
But that's just fine.
Yeah.
That's their ideal temperature.
Yep. Yeah. It's nice and cool for them. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. That's awesome.
And what do you have, Bill?
Well, you went sciencey. I went the other way.
That's good. We need the contrast.
I need the contrast. I have watched, I don't think I've finished it, but I have watched Turbo Kid off of Netflix.
Yep.
And in there is a device called the Gnome Stick.
Oh, great.
And what it is, it's a simple weapon. Description: this can be found or easily manufactured with a bat and a concrete garden gnome sculpture by securing the gnome to the end of the bat in some way, which is exactly how it's built by the main character and given to his love interest. Is he takes a garden gnome, secures it into the bat, and it's this. And I don't know. You're sitting there going, I don't know why he's making this. And then when he gives it to her, she goes, "This is my gnome stick," and then she falls in love with it. Right?
Wow.
Basically, here's while this weapon simply does 1d6 plus 1 damage, or 1d6 plus 3 if used two-handed, the benefits is in its startle factor. When whipped out prior to combat against intelligent creatures, the PC still roll initiative, but goes first during the first round of combat. After the first round, the PC then goes into a normal initiative order. But wait, there's more. Critical hit. When someone with a strength modifier of +2 or greater uses the gnome stick and scores a critical hit, the PC must make a DC 5 luck check. On a failure, the concrete gnome explodes and causes all creatures within 10 feet 1d3 damage. The gnome bat reverts to a standard club until a new garden gnome can be found and reattached.
That's horrifying. Exploding gnomes. It's just wrong. I love it.
So, you went high tech, I went low tech.
Boy, talk about the worst last thing you could possibly see, right?
That's right. Well, what it needs to be is one of these amoeba creatures carrying the gnome stick after you.
I think we're shading into the horror genre now.
Absolutely. All right, let's start closing this out.
Okay, sounds great. As far as announcements go, we want to bring your attention to GaryCon coming up March 23rd through 26th, 2017, and that will be held in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, the cradle of civilization, as it were, for role-playing games. GaryCon, there will be 10 sessions of Mutant Crawl Classics, 5 sessions of Crawling Under a Broken Moon, 2 sessions of Star Frontiers, and 1 session of Gamma World First Edition that I know about so far. There may be more.
In a partridge in a pear.
It feels like that, doesn't it? There may be some more from other systems as well. I'm hoping so. This is, again, just an early peek into what might be available there. As I hear more, or as the listeners get back and let us know more, we'll make those announcements as well. But in any case, that is almost 20 sessions of post-apocalyptic goodness. So some great stuff there. If you can make it, fantastic. If not, you can be jealous and follow people on Google Plus who are there and enjoy the fact that somebody's enjoying it, and we'll be thinking of you. Secondly, we want to bring congratulations. We give our congratulations to Dan Glover. He is the winner of the 2016 Rodney's DCC Adventure Design Contest, and we look forward to experiencing Tune the Unspeakable. It sounds, well, unspeakably good, so let's look forward to that.
I actually printed out those 3 covers and sat down and made notes, and I never got anything that congealed, but I did get a lot of stuff for me. So that was a great exercise.
Good, excellent, outstanding. Yeah, I submitted something. It was a little, I'll admit, a little last minute, but I may carry through with it, and I don't know. Who knows? I published things myself before. I might try that again. We'll see. Yeah. But in the meantime, Dan's going to get the official stamp of approval for Tune the Unspeakable. I'm really looking forward to that. That's good stuff.
Excellent.
Good stuff. So I thought we'd just really quickly address some of the possible upcoming episodes to look for of Glowburn that are coming up. So I've Bill, you and I go back and forth on choosing stuff and kind of choose together, sometimes choose ourselves. And one of the ones that I think, I don't remember who the initial, actually I think I had the impetus for this one, but we both agreed it would be a good one. We're going to be looking at robots, androids, and other mechanical creatures. Oh my.
AI, stuff like that.
AIs, yep. Very much looking forward to that episode. We also, as a result of some of the contacts I was able to make at Gamehole, have some potential episodes coming up, interviews coming up. We are hoping to talk to Bob Brinkman about the. For those who don't know, Bob is a Call of Cthulhu keeper, and he runs Call of Cthulhu fairly frequently, and or at least at the cons he does. And we're hoping to bring him in to talk about how to use investigative elements in a post-apocalyptic setting, which personally I find that kind of fascinating. So we'll see what Bob has. I mentioned earlier that we would like to talk to some of the artists about Mutant Crawl Classics and the art therein, because let's face it, that's what draws people in initially a lot of the time, is that wonderful art that's presented. And Bill, do you recall what else we've got on the docket there?
Yeah, well, we've hinted at before that, and I think it was in the first episode where we were talking about the post-apocalyptic genre, and the fact that the post-apocalyptic setting really does warrant, it is a major part of the game, and it does warrant its own show, so we're going to do something along that lines. And then I think that was the other one, maybe even touch on some Gamma World stuff as well. And that will probably that's probably going to be some good stuff until we get to one that we know that we're going to want to do.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of timing, and that's interview the main mutant himself, right?
Yeah, Jim Wampler, and Jim. Like I said, I talked to him at Gamehole. He is very supportive of the show, which we appreciate. Thank you, Jim. And we're hoping to pull him in at a time that's hopefully convenient for him. But we're thinking sometime close to the release time for the Kickstarter. So next summer we'll look forward to that. And we actually had, Bill, you and I talked about doing an episode preceding that about what we're most curious about, that we don't know about Mutant Crawl Classics, what we're looking forward to.
That'll be fun to use for a comparison of when things do come out.
Yeah, we can see how horribly
we can
wrong.
steal audio clips from that.
Yeah, we can see how horribly wrong we were.
We'll do a comparison episode after that.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, then we'll spend another episode just digging ourselves out of a hole, right?
It'll be fun.
Anyways, yeah, we're really looking forward to that. So a lot of great episodes coming up. And again, if you have any ideas for episodes, we would love to hear about them. Like I said, our schedule's pretty full, so get your vote early and often, and let us know what you'd like to hear about as well, and we'll see what we can shoehorn in there. We appreciate all the listeners and the feedback that they've given us over our short stint so far, and really value your input.
And you can contact us on Twitter at Glowburn. Do follow us. Also, if you want to send us a direct communication, email us at glowburnpodcast@gmail.com. You can also, any and all are welcome to join the Glowburn community. Forrest and I, that's one of the places where we dump a lot of what we find out there on the internet, and we try to keep it fun and lively. And feel free to join in. There's no high castle there. Just everybody jump in.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to reach me, you can follow me on Twitter at DNDBill. And also I do occasionally and have started putting more out there on my blog, which is nonlineardungeon.wordpress.com. How about you, Forrest? How do we find you?
You can reach me at Twitter. That's at Forrest Aguirre, FORRESTAGUIRRE.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds. And you can also follow my blog, https forrestaguirre.blogspot.com.
And we'd like to give special thanks and credits to our shaman of intros and outros and bumpers, Bob the Voice Brinkman, patron AI of audiovisual engineering, Hector the Missile Cruise, and our creative advisors over there on the Google Plus community, Glowburn, currently sitting at 128 strong. Our intro and outro song was Juno by Chronox and their Voyager album. And what do you got left, Forrest?
Yeah, we're stuck on this ship with only so much oxygen, so don't burn them if you got them.
And don't waste time figuring out that security unit. Get that paralysis dart gun working, because those bloodbirds are headed this way.
Look out.
Ariel, Ukla, ride!
Blood of your enemy makes you stronger.
This has been a Hectophonic production.
The gun is good, the gun is good, the gun is good, the gun is good,
I'm bored.
Me too. This 24th level Dark Elf Barbarian Assassin is lame.
Hey, want excitement?
I do.
Want adventure?
Yeah!
Then just open up a vein and pray to the Dark Master. Burn some luck and roll a die. Now you're ready to listen to Spellburn.
Welcome to Spellburn, a podcast about the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school adventuring. Join the band and party like it's 1974.
Hey guys, can I play?
Sure. Check us out at spellburn.com or wherever fine iTunes are served.
Oh cool, I summoned a demon horde.
Remember when your Dungeons & Dragons came in a box? Remember when your campaigns were all about rulings and not rules? Remember when the only toolbox you needed was the spirit of invention? Well, those days are back. Join us on the Saber Die podcast as we discuss all that was best in the golden age of role-playing. We'll review classic D&D products and brand new old-school games. We also interview some of the industry's mightiest movers and shakers. So tune in. You can find us at saberdie.info, the iTunes store, or D20